I had attention deficit disorder. I could never get through a paragraph. If I was not interested in something, you could not force me to read that or memorize one sentence of it.
What was it about a picture you took in college that you showed to a professor that really impacted you?
Yeah, I remember I was obsessed with diving when I was 19 years old. When I found out when I went to the University of Victoria that I could, for $150, get certified in diving and go beneath the waves. And they had a really intensive course. And then right away I got a little Nikonis camera. And I took that camera down and all of a sudden just started shooting, and I started becoming obsessed with bringing this underwater world back up to the surface. And then when one of my professors, Dr. Fontaine, who's a world authority in invertebrate zoology, marine invertebrate zoology, I showed him a couple of my images, and he was like, wow, that is incredible. Can I get a copy of that? I need to use that for my teaching my students. And I was like, whoa, I have a purpose. I mean, here's a guy who's the best in the world at what he does, and here's little old me with my camera who just impressed him in a world that he's an expert in. I realized that there was a role for me in visual storytelling.
I remember reading some story that you were trying to convince your professor not to flunk you in a class, to at least give you a D, where you promised you would never go into that field. But to what extent did you feel like a failure because you just weren't cutting it?
I was really a bad student. I had attention deficit disorder. I could not medically diagnosed, but I could never read a textbook. I could never get through a paragraph. If I was not interested in something, you could not force me to read that or memorize one sentence of it. So I struggled in school because I really didn't enjoy it. When I grew up with the Inuit in Baffin Island, your school was on the land. You went out on the land to learn about ice and snow and traveling and conditions and changing elements and weather. We didn't spend much time in school learning from books. So I've never learned to be a good student. And now you're in university trying to compete with this system of brilliant minds. And I was just barely getting by. I was not into it. I was not happy. But rather than run from it, I'm like, I'm going to finish school as fast as I can. And so, I mean, I dove 7 days a week. My dorm room in residence smelled like a seaweed farm. I was not popular. They were going to kick me out of residence on university because...
Legitimately?
Legitimately, because it stunk so bad in there. I had all my dive gear in there. I had very little money. I would go diving. I would often put my tank and my dry suit and my dive gear get on my little motorbike, and I would drive off the dives and go do a dive and get on my motorbike and drive back to residence.
I understand at some point early on you would stay up all night writing on paper what you wanted to do with your career.
Well, it was actually, I was going into my genetics exam, and...
You had an epiphany.
And I had an epiphany. I just, instead of studying, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm going to drop out of school because I'm going to fail this exam. I'm going to fail this course. I just can't keep doing this. And I just started to sketch out and do goal setting all night. I just started to write goal setting of what I was going to do with my life, the animals, the species, the storytelling, the conservation work that I was going to do with my life. And I just started sketching out this path forward for me in life. And as I did that, and I was like going to work for National Geographic someday, I was going to mostly specialize in the polar regions, diving under the ice, bringing this underwater world to the rest of the world. And I just started to energize me. And I'm still like late into the night, and I'm just like still going and excited. Went into the exam. Again, it was just another language I was looking at on that exam paper. I knew I was going to fail, and I wrote the professor a letter on my back of my exam. I said, look, I know I'm going to fail this course, and I promise you I'll never go into genetics. If you could just please set me free. I want to be a National Geographic photographer. I know what I want to do. I'm proud to be a biologist. I want my degree. If you could just pass me. And sure enough, I went to the board, and I knew I'd failed because I didn't even write the exam. I mean, there's no point. And I went and looked up on the board, and there was a D, and I'm just like, oh, thank you so much. Because you're young, you're only 20 years old, or 21 years old, and you've got this path in your mind. You can feel it, you could taste it, you want it. And there's sort of life and being young all getting in the way, all mixed up in this convoluted soup, you know. And it just, at this point, just to figure it all out, all of a sudden you just got this little inch forward down this path, and it's like, yep, I must be on the right path, you know, and you just keep pushing.